Welcome to the CFB Paint Podcast. We're back again. Week 2 is in the books. Another data point for us. I like it because now we get to see the trends. Is this team really what we thought they were? Are they not what they thought they were? Apparently the AP poll thinks Clemson is nothing. And yeah, we're going to see what happens. For this week for Rapid Round Reaction, we're talking about our worst investment losses. Whether that be amount, whether it be missed opportunities. It's your choice what you want to talk about. Steve, let's hear yours.
Yeah, I got a couple that I could share. I'll focus on just one. So I at one point owned a fair amount of Amazon stock before their 20-to-1 split. So I don't know exactly what the price point would be. I guess divided by 20, but I owned them at 800, and they bumped like 10%, and I sold and never bought back in. And within I think 7 or 8 months, went from 800 to like up in the thousands, then all the way they peaked at I think about 3,500, and that would have been a pretty significant amount of money for me. I was young and cavalier, was single, didn't have a whole lot of responsibilities or a whole lot of debt, and so I was playing fast and loose with a lot of my money. So there's one missed opportunity. As far as like a loss, I think one of the big ones that I have, again, more in that I lost the upside for it, but I had a couple hundred shares of Plug Power that I bought at like $2, I think back in 2017, 2016. I don't have my portfolio in front of me, so I don't remember the years. But waited like I was just learning, just starting investing, and after about 18 months, it was still right at $1. And so I finally said, you know what, I'm going to get that money out of there and go invest it elsewhere where I think it might be a little bit more productive. And I'm sure that I had some wins there, but probably some losses too. But Plug Power over the pandemic, I don't know what it peaked at, but I want to say it was in the 70s. So
yeah, I think
it would have been a huge win. And I've learned and I'm more disciplined and less emotional with my investment decisions now. So, oof.
It's not a fun loss on that one. Brian,
No.
Go ahead. What do you got?
I don't have any crazy losses. Steven talks about being a little bit fast and loose when he's young and single. I was married at the age of 22, so not super young and single, super long. But there's two that stick out to me, and one's kind of like a greed sort of thing where I just like sold a tad too early. So I owned some Under Armour stock, and this was in 2018 or 19, and I think I had a 15% return, but I was like, I'm ready to move this on. Like, it's kind of been at 15% for a while, been kind of stable. I wrote a Steph Curry high into that one. And then I sold, and the next day it went up an additional 15%. And it was just like, man, if I had just hung on for like a couple more days, like would have doubled my return on that. But so that was one where it was just like, just a little bit of more patience would have gone a long way. The one for me where I've made my most significant loss was I owned Carnival late in 2019. I got out and it was looking already not great then, I'll say. But then the pandemic comes around in early 2020. I get out in February, I think the second week of February, 2020, and I assume 40% loss on that. Thank goodness I didn't own a ton of it, but it's a 40% loss, and to date, it has still not gotten back up to the point where I sold it at. And so it was kind of like a hard, like, do I get out of this and like, or do I ride the whole pandemic through and go wait for this to come all the way back up? So far, it hasn't come back up, and my other investments that I've put that money in have done well. I don't know that well, so still TBD if that was the right call. Probably not, but we're still riding that one out. But that was a hard one to swallow, where it was like, I think the move right now is just to take the loss. And to be fair, I would have gone down to would have been 90%, or not 90%, 8% loss had I waited to the pits of the pandemic.
Thanks.
So we'll see. But either way about it, I didn't make money, that's for sure. So that's probably the biggest one for me.
For me, I've had a few where I've ridden them out to be delisted from the stock market. Thankfully, there wasn't a lot of money invested in those. But for me, the biggest ones I got hit were Tilray and Canopy, two cannabis companies that kind of just plummeted and went down in the down in a flame of weed smoke, and that's what I wanted to be doing afterwards, just getting some of those. I mean, it wasn't. I'm back in the green. That's all I care about, But
What kind of green?
good enough green. But it sounds like Steve, your amount. Let's go with you first, me second, and then Brian third. It sounds like.
Yeah, I felt like this week, kind of like you said, where it's another data point. It helps us kind of understand and put week one into context. I don't know, like as far as like my rapid round, it's just like for me, obviously, I think you have to start with Texas, right? Texas, man, they look sharp. They look ready. Now it's really up to them. Like, can they avoid the stumbles that they have not avoided for the last 10 years, where they lose to teams that they're not supposed to? And Sark has lost a lot of games he's not supposed to there. So, like, give them credit for what they just did. Now it's don't. I mean, I hate to say like trip at the finish line, but like the major hurdle is cleared, right? Like
you're going to be favored in all your games. Yeah.
The major hurdle is cleared. You've got like essentially a get out of jail free card. Like you can lose a game, you can mess up once, you can't mess up twice. So it'll be fun to watch them going forward, especially now that the whole Big 12, if they didn't have enough motivation for them leaving the conference, they absolutely have a target on their back as one of the now college football playoff, I guess, a favorite to participate. Maybe not a favorite to win it just yet, but definitely have a really high probability, or their odds indicate that they're likely to participate in the playoff as of this point.
Yeah. For me, my rapid reaction is they are back. The thing is that can mean so many teams right now. Texas, Florida State, Colorado. I mean, you can keep going on. Miami. Like, which teams are back? A lot of teams have claimed it. It's kind of like, all right, Colorado from the 90s, Florida State from the 90s to 2000s was a good team. Miami in the 2000s and early 80s, or late 80s, early 90s. And then you have Texas, which they think they're better than they are, but, they won one in 2006. We can give them that one or something like that. But, like, it's kind of interesting. All these teams are kind of getting to the forefront. We've seen the SEC kind of take a little bit of a hit. LSU, Texas A&M, the three best teams in the SEC West, quote unquote, three best teams. We don't know if they will be or not. Have all taken a loss already. And then you've already got I was looking at the SEC. The SEC through 2 weeks already has 6 teams with losses, which is kind of like, yeah. So, and Vanderbilt has 2 wins on that. So we're gonna not even but good for them, Anyways, that's my rapid reaction. Kind of like, what we got a trend line, but where are we going still? Brian?
Yeah, with all these teams that are back, one thing we see in the AP top 25 is the top 5 teams are one team from the ACC, one team from the SEC, one from the Big 10, one from the Big 12, one from the Pac-12. And we're not going to see conferences look the same in years to come, but that's really special. That's usually you have one that's really holding power of the others. And to be fair, the Pac-12 has been the deepest conference. They have 8 teams in the top 25, I think, at this point. So, which is ridiculous. Ever? Yeah.
Talk about a swan song.
Yeah, what a way to end the career of the entire Pac-12. Hopefully they can continue to play up to that level. But it's with all these teams coming back, everyone's going to claim it for the moment. But you do have like legit. I don't know what would happen in this matchup between this team and this team. And it doesn't feel like outside of Georgia, which has been the case for a couple years now. Outside of Georgia, it doesn't feel like, oh, I really know who would win between a USC and a Michigan, or a Texas and a Florida State. Just that top 5 is very fun and really interesting to see how it shakes out over the course of the season. Also, I don't know how much we'll talk about Colorado and Nebraska, because Colorado is always fun to talk about, but like they should have beat Nebraska and they did, and we all expected like they're going to do way over the line. But I'm really curious where Sean Lewis is going to be coaching next year. He may still be there because his profile is very big, and I expect they're only going to get more money coming in with the success that they're seeming to have at the moment. But also, he can have his pick, I think, after what he's done in one cycle, one transfer, I guess 1 year of having transfers, bringing all these different things and putting them together and having them look so good 2 weeks in a row, so put together against teams that look less put together and who you would have thought might have the coaching upper hand against them and have not. credit to the Colorado staff as a whole, Deion Sanders, everything that's been done there, and the players have been showing out. But Sean Lewis, I think, is, similar to a Garrett Riley from last year. He's one to watch for. He's going to get either move into a big program to be the OC or get his own head job somewhere pretty quick here.
Yeah, he joins that short list a little bit of coaches you might want to go grab.
Yeah,
for sure.
You definitely have to make a call there.
Yeah, for sure. Him and Brian Hartline from Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this the other day. I'm gonna pose this question for you. This is nothing. I'm going off the script right away. I was thinking, if Napier starts to falter and starts to get to like not do too well, do you fire him and go get Brian Hartline? Like, you can keep that class together probably still with him, and I mean, your recruiting's gonna be amazing. What are your thoughts?
I don't know if you'd go get Brian Hartline to be that, a head coach at that program. I'd be surprised, and to me that seems like a risky move. I thought when you started to pose the question, I thought you were asking, do they go and get Prime from Colorado? Which to me makes a little bit more sense. He's been a head coach now for a couple of years. Yeah, exactly. And it wouldn't stun me if he was to leave after 1 year, especially like one of the things, like, we'll explore this probably later in this offseason, is like with taking all those transfers, like lots of them still have eligibility left, right? So I don't think they're going to be able to like jump another 2 or 3 leaps and bounds next year, because it's going to be the same roster, right? Or at least largely the same. So that part is potentially pretty interesting to see, like, okay, do they make this big leap in year one, but then there's only so much improvement they can make from year one to year two because they have largely the same players. And now, of course, those players will develop some, and you may end up clearing some more roster space on some of the transfers that you took that he might say you go up and get in the portal again. Anyway, so Heartline to me for Florida, I mean, I feel like they've gone. Let's see. Let's go through their last couple of hires. Offensive guru with or I guess, yeah, or not McElwain. Sorry, with Mullen was who I was thinking of. But had previously been a head coach for years in the SEC. Billy Napier, lots of head coaching experience at ULL. Worked in the SEC. Worked at Clemson. Had a really strong resume both as a assistant coach but also as a head coach. With Hartline, you don't have that head coaching data point.
You don't.
While we're talking about, so it's a risk. That doesn't mean it can't work, right? So I don't know. That'd be interesting. I don't know how high he'd be up on the list though at Florida.
Yeah, I think Deion might be interesting because he has a chip on his shoulder for Florida State not hiring him a little bit.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say there's that other thing too, but also getting him back to the state of Florida where he has roots. And he doesn't have to convince kids to come and play in Colorado. And most of those kids that he's recruiting are in the Southeast.
If you can get him to go play in Boulder, you can probably go get him to play in Florida.
Easy.
I think there might be a burning New Jersey session in Tallahassee if he goes down there.
Oh, that's
at least done retiring a number.
Yeah, he'd be like, listen, you don't go up in our rafters. Anyways,
yeah.
Back on track. Stephen kind of touched on it first. The big game of the week, Texas and Alabama. Brian, what are your thoughts? Let's kick us off.
So immediately, Quinn Ewers, a couple of good long ball touchdowns puts him like, okay, this is what we need to see on a consistent basis. With the tools that you have, and he used a lot of them on Saturday, you got to make sure that you're utilizing the maximum of those, and that includes for an A.D. Mitchell and for a Xavier Worthy an ability to beat your man long down the field. So that one is incredible not incredible to see, very important to see. Because of the way that it unlocks everything else that they can do in that offense with all the playmakers that they have. Really what stuck out to me, two things when Alabama has the ball. Number one, I think the Texas defense does a great job of rallying to the football. Anytime the ball goes out wide, it's not a body that gets him, it's bodies that get him. And I think that's a mentality thing and a coaching thing that has really needed to step up for them and is showed out here. So it doesn't matter if I don't get this one-on-one tackle. If I can get there, I know everybody's behind me. So if I can slow them, doesn't matter. I thought the way that the effort that they played with throughout the game was really impressive. The other thing, and this is more on the Alabama side, is you've got to find a way to teach Jalen Milroe to be comfortable in the pocket. because there were times where he was in clean pockets and rolled right out of them because, there's a timer going off in his head too soon, or he's like, I'm more comfortable if I'm a little bit more out in the open making plays, which I think he's very good at. I think he's got a skill set for it, but you need to have some comfortability. When your offensive line has done its job, don't make it harder on everyone. And that occasionally happened in the game and to their detriment. But to me, this is a game that didn't, like, the scoreline didn't flatter Texas. Like, they outplayed Alabama in this game. They deserved the win. They deserved the win by 10. That was the thing to me, is like, last year I felt like Texas outplayed them early, but then they were just hanging on, and ultimately the better team won out. This was one where I was waiting for Alabama to see if they could assert themselves as the better team, and it's like, no, Texas is just better. And if we played this game over and over again, I expect this is the most common outcome that would get, is a score similar to this and win similar to this amount for Texas. And really a statement they're putting out to the college football world with that. You don't win easily in Bryant Denny Stadium. It's just not done. And we'll see if any other teams can do it this year, but this is a big one.
Anyways, Steve, what are your thoughts?
First, I was right. That has to be the first one. And we'll get to my record on that later in this pod, but probably should have just led with that. This game was really, to me, about Texas, I think, offensively and defensively. Like, it wasn't like their offense was outscored Alabama's offense, right? They were better on offense than they obviously won when they had the ball. They outplayed Bama's defense, but when Bama had the ball, their defense outplayed Bama's offense. Like, to me, their front four was awesome. Like, and especially when they were rushing. Gosh, I'm gonna forget his name here. I've got their roster. Anthony Hill, the freshman, number 0. He's a fun guy to watch. The Burke, the defensive end, the sophomore. Oh, gosh, I can't remember his number. He's up there. Yeah, Ethan Burke, number 91. Man, that guy played a game too. So that was just a fun game to watch, where you saw, like you said, Brian, people flying around, rallying to the football. I thought they played with their hair on fire. They did an awesome job, start to finish. That being said, like, Jalen Milroe, like, not his best game, but like, I see more than I thought I was gonna see. I was like, okay, the guy can somewhat throw the football, right? Whereas last year, I never really saw him throw the football. Like, I mean, there's just like, okay, it's a run first offense always. They've got something to work with there. I don't think all is lost for Bama, but boy, did Texas take the inside track as far as getting into the college football playoff and kind of asserting themselves as the team to beat in the Big 12. Obviously, it wasn't a conference game, but that was fascinating and fun to watch from that's kind of what I thought could happen. They might be building a juggernaut there in Austin.
Yeah, Texas, for me, like, they left points on the board in the first 3 quarters. They went into the fourth down 16-13, but they never seemed like they were panicking, and that was kind of interesting. I watched the game with one of my Texas fan buddies and his father-in-law. We sat and drank a bunch of kava and enjoyed the game. But it just never seemed like Texas was out of control. They responded. They never panicked. It was, let's go and do what we need to do. And kudos and props to them. Like, that was well done and well executed from a player and coaching standpoint. I've voiced my doubts in Sarkisian, and Sarkisian made it very obvious that they were going to be balanced, and they were balanced, and they were effective in that game. And so it was a fun game to watch. Now can Texas take everybody's best shot, because they're going to.
Yeah.
They're apparently, I was talking to my buddy, and he's like, yeah, the Big 12 commissioner made a comment when they were at a Texas Tech booster thing, and he's like, yeah, I hope you guys beat Texas this year, 2 of them. I was like, so there might be some finagling from the refs, who knows? But the conference wants to have their shots at them, so as they go, we'll see what happens. But I also saw somewhere else that said the average top 25 team would have a 14% chance of winning against Rice and Alabama. Basically saying Texas has had the best result against their schedule out of every other team. Second at 37%.
you look at Rice beating Houston in week 2, and you go, okay, they're not somebody that you can just sleep on totally. Like that's not an option. So it contextualizes that first game a little bit for you.
Exactly. Any other thoughts about the game? Just happy to see Texas is back. I really wanted him to say it at the end. He'd be like, so what do you have to say? And he's like, we'll take it game by game. I'm like, come on. Anyway, we'll move on to our next game that we've got going on. Utah Baylor. Let's talk Utah Baylor. Anybody have thoughts they want to put out there? If not,
I'll give a couple things. We hate watched that game. We are, BYU alum. My wife's a big BYU fan. I would consider myself a small BYU fan. But yeah, and so we just like at one point we just saw like, oh, they're in a dogfight here. We should probably switch over to that game. So we did, and it's funny. She's like, I feel like ever since we switched, like things started turning. Uh, where I mean, I think we probably caught most of the fourth quarter, where again it was kind of just a stalemate for a bit there still, and then the wheels come off for Baylor. Number one, like that was one. Again, we're going through my picks here. We posted that video on what, Friday, but we recorded it on Tuesday. The line moved a little bit, so in mine, again, it was a -6 for Utah, and I said they'll cover that. They did, but not at all the way I expected them to. And it's funny because like it was, I think we were 2 possessions before they made the change. Gosh, I'm gonna get this timeline wrong, but at some point, like they showed up the stats for Bryson Barnes, and he was just like, I think he was 6 of 19 throwing the football, and it was like, oh man, if that's going to be the case, why don't you just go with the freshman Nate Johnson, who's going to give you more running and is probably not going to give you worse passing than that? Like, why aren't we doing this? And then sure enough, they go to him. I think they did some wildcat stuff with Jaquindon Jackson as well, who is a former quarterback. But it was, just like Utah decided that they were going to go with a little bit more simple scheme and just hope that they could get one score or a couple of field goals to change the outcome there. They get fortunate that toward the end of the game, Baylor, driving with a chance to break the tie, ends up turning the ball over, and it's just like, oh. As soon as that happened, I feel like the air went out of the stadium. I think all the fans just like, oh, we know how this story ends. We're Baylor fans. We have years and years of this heartbreak. It's only recently that they've actually had some more happy endings. So I don't know. I don't know if I had a whole lot of analysis on that game so much as it was just like, oh wow, like I felt like there were a couple results like this. I don't know if it's on our list to talk about, but like Auburn Cal was kind of that same thing where it's just like from one play, the other team just decides like, all right, we know we can't win, and then it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. I saw a comment made about that Auburn game. It's like, hey, we got a two quarterback system, but it cannot be like that. We played in California. Same thing, like the 2 quarterback system. I mean, Nate Johnson was 6 for 7. Bryson Barnes was 6 for 19. His QBR in this is an 8.9. He threw for 71 yards at 3.7 yards an attempt. You might as well run the ball the entire game. Like you might as well run the wing tee. Like they are missing Cam Rising so much, but they're getting wins, and wins are what matter right now. You can't, as long as you're getting unscathed, you can't be too bugged by that because you're missing your top guy. So surprising, interesting. Were you guys high on Baylor in the Big 12?
No.
Okay, so then not totally surprising. We all thought they would cover, I think. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Brian, you have any thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, I just think it's important for Utah to get the win the way they got the win. Last week against Florida, it was kind of jump out on them early, and then, they don't have as much offensive production in the second half because they weren't trying to. Like, you need the clock to run. Like, we've got our lead, we've got where we want to be. Let's make sure that we're bleeding as much clock as we can as we go along. This one, you're coming from behind and you're doing it without Cam Rising. And so I was, as soon as I saw that Baylor jumped on him a little bit, I was concerned because I was thinking, oh, you're not, now it's going to be a lot harder to manufacture that 70-yard bomb that Barnes started off the game against Florida with. And he had, just a rough time, a rough time against Baylor. But they go through, they grit it out, they get the result, and now Baylor's 0-2 and 0-2 both with games at home. That doesn't bode well. And it's a long season, and I talked about some pressure on Dave Aranda starting to ramp up potentially after the Texas State loss. I don't think that's going to go away too quick unless they can get some good wins when conference play starts. So I just think it's important for Utah to get the win the way they did, especially while Rising's out, because I wasn't sure if they could win that way if needed. And sure enough, they held their composure and got it done.
And something that we haven't talked about is this Utah defense. I mean, you allow 11 points to Florida and 13 to Baylor. Like, in reality, it should have been more like 3 points to Florida, but still, they're keeping them in the games, and they're probably the reason that they're winning. Probably similar to how the Jets won tonight, In case you're wondering, we're recording this on Monday. Anyways, next game that we want to talk about, Oregon, Texas Tech, in Lubbock. Who caught that game?
I'll talk and watch it live. Yeah.
Yeah, no, dude. It's just Oregon had the lead, and all of a sudden Texas Tech kind of roared back in the third quarter. And you flip over, and you're like, they're going to lose this game. They're going to lose this game. And Oregon able to kind of throw down the clinch this in the fourth quarter. I expected them to cover the spread. I don't think they did, to be honest. I think the spread was more than 8. It's just not overly impressive from this Oregon team. Makes me question my pick for the Pac-12. There's a lot of questioning I did this weekend, guys. But yeah, but you get out of Lubbock, which we all know weird things can happen in Lubbock too. So you get out of Lubbock, you're technically unscathed. Just pat yourself on the back. There's 10 more games to go. That's kind of my thought process. But Bo Nix does throw for 359 yards and 2 touchdowns, so can't go too wrong with that. The yards and touchdowns are what you need to keep those posters up in New York City for the Heisman campaign.
All across all the digital media that no matter where I go on any sports website, I feel like I got a bodacious, and it's just like, okay, all right.
Nike is funding that for sure.
Oh, without a doubt.
There's people like, Caleb Williams and Quinn Ewers that don't need the money behind it. Bo Nix needs the money behind it right now. You're kind of at a disadvantage if you're in the West Coast.
I think Phil Knight's realizing, I probably am not going to ever see them win a national championship in my lifetime, so I might as well just try and double down on the Heisman.
There you go. Did Mariota ever win it?
Yeah, he got one.
He did.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I was saying. We're going to go for 2 for the Heisman since the Natty maybe is beyond our grasp.
All right, let's talk Michigan.
The thing that stuck out.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Can I just dive in just a couple bit? The thing that I thought with the Oregon Texas Tech game is Texas Tech ran the ball pretty successfully throughout the game, and I thought there's 2 teams on the schedule that I think you might have trouble with when the Pac-12 play starts, and that's Oregon State and Utah. Those are teams that are going to want to run it right at you and have the backs to do it and have the physicality to do it. And if you're struggling, not that Texas Tech is bad at running the ball, but if you're struggling against Texas Tech, I think you're going to have even more struggles against those 2 teams. So the pathway to win, I don't think I have many questions about Nix or what the offense can do. The offense looks really good, and once they got clicking in this game, they're able to make up the ground that they had given up previously. But anyway, that run defense will be something to watch in those 2 games because that's how they're going to want to beat them. So we'll see.
Yeah. We will see. All right, Michigan, UNLV. Anybody catch the game? Michigan games are boring right now. But I will say
they're going to be boring till November. I'll have
I'll check in late in the
They
season.
don't blow teams out, but they also don't lose to them. So, and it's not really close. But I will say this: J.J. McCarthy has 7 incompletions over 2 games and has 5 touchdowns. That's insane. He is. I'm pulling up the numbers: 48 for 55, an 87% completion rate, 555 yards, with an average of 10 per attempt, and 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Maybe a Heisman hopeful if they beat Ohio State. The problem is getting in front of people. And you don't have to get in front of people until you take Penn State and
He'll need to make
State.
a late surge in the season where if he has a couple Herculean efforts in those games, then maybe.
Yeah.
But right now, you've got Shedeur Sanders doing crazy things. You've got Ewers, who's got this. I don't think he has been the best, but like he's been good, and he's got this incredible array of tools to use. And then you've still got to overcome the incumbent champion Caleb Williams. So there's work to be done, and I think until November, it's gonna be hard for him to get the momentum going.
Yeah. We want to talk about Georgia Ball State at all? The fact that it was 0-0 going into the second quarter? Upset alert! No, I'm just kidding. But they haven't looked as polished as we would expect a Georgia team to be honest. So kind of a little interesting to me. I mean, they're not.
Yeah, I saw like I don't know. I've kind of been looking at that and like I wish this team was playing in a better SEC at the moment, so that way we could get a better like because the thing is like last year you had Tennessee who was looking on fire for a while and they lose that Georgia game, but this year Tennessee looks a little shaky. South Carolina has had their pitfalls. Kentucky didn't start off this week incredibly. They get the win decently comfortably in the end, but you know that second contender in the East isn't there right now, and so that's what makes me think Georgia's going to be just fine even if they don't fix anything.
Yeah, the schedule, an easy schedule just gets easier.
I mean, yeah, it's just like I see where there's reason for like concern, but it's not like they're playing Notre Dame next week. So that concern is like way down the line. They have a lot of time to figure things out, and I expect them to because of the talent and the coaching that's been proven.
No, I completely agree with you. Any thoughts on that, Steve? Or are you good?
I really didn't see any of it. I did see like, oh yeah, this seems a little close for a little longer than I would have thought. I think they're gonna figure it out. I'm not too concerned with Georgia. Yeah,
They also
I think that
last year played with their food a ton, and so they played major teams and then they put them away. So maybe it's the same thing again this year.
perhaps, yeah. I don't know. I'm that one. I'm not hitting the panic button until they're in the third quarter in a one-score game.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, let's talk Washington, Tulsa. Washington has been impressive through two games, beating Boise State, and then Tulsa. Michael Penix Jr. has tried to put his name up there. I saw something like where like Michael Penix Jr. and Shedeur Sanders are like Shedeur Sanders has like 904 yards through two games. Michael Penix Jr. has like 859 yards through two games. Like that's insane. You have some guys that are just putting up ridiculous numbers. His 73% completion rate and 8 touchdowns to 1 interception. Can't scoff at that. They've looked at being in control. Any other comments you guys want to say on that? I'm kind of hogging the mic on that one.
Just that, yeah, they look sharp. It took them a little bit to get going against Boise State, but that offense is rolling, and I think that offense will serve them really well in some of these games where there's, they're gonna need points when they play. Yeah, I don't think, do they have USC on the schedule this year? I am now drawing a blank on that. I believe they do.
Sure.
But you're going to need points in that game, or if you meet them in the Pac-12 championship game. Sorry, this is really poor of me rambling around like this, but you're going to need it against Oregon too. And it's maybe not the traditional way, like you pointed out, Brian. Like teams that want to run the football can have success against Oregon. Washington's not going to look to run first, but last year they were able to put up points. Can they do that again? Can they, duplicate that effort? Who doesn't love what they're doing in the Pacific Northwest right now? They're doing some real things. So I'm high on them. It's going to be exciting though. They will get more eyeballs on their game this week at Michigan State, just probably more for the intrigue with everything that's going down there, which we haven't touched on yet. But anyway, so
let's touch on it. We'll get back to previews. Why not?
Should we jump into that for a second?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So for those who, I'm not happy. I'm happy with it. For those who don't know or aren't aware, Mel Tucker's been suspended for sexual harassment allegations on the sexual harassment instructor to the Michigan State football team. All right. Well, that's a little. No one had that on their bingo card this year, I'm sure.
Yeah. Wow.
What?
Yeah, what on earth? Just for me, like, it's, I don't know, like the details that we're not going to go into a whole lot on this. We'll let you, decide whether or not you want that going on in your car with whoever you're listening to this with. But the details are odd. But then the victim is also really odd because this is somebody who has survived like a former victim of sexual assault. This is somebody who is going on and teaching the student athletes so that they understand, like, hey, these are the things you need to do as far as like being a real man and not sort of having these exact type of behaviors go on. So obviously, no, I shouldn't say obviously. Mel Tucker has denied these allegations that there's anything non-consensual that occurred, and so there will be some back and forth on that. But really, like, not on the bingo card is the perfect way to put it, where it's just like some of these things you couldn't dream up that this was going to happen for any university at any point. And yeah, Mel Tucker's fall from grace so far has been pretty steep.
Yeah, my thought process on this is I'm not going to say the victim's wrong or anything. Like, the victim's entitled to their side of the story, but I also think Mel Tucker's entitled to his side of the story, and he came out pretty adamantly on that page and a half of what he's kind of thinking. It's kind of an interesting brush. You're painted one way right away from like, oh, you're suspended for sexual harassment, and then we don't get to hear his side of the story. And so that page and a half is his side of the story, and we'll see what happens. I do think this is the beginning of the end to him. I think we talked about him as being one of the coaches we thought was going to be potentially let go. The biggest issue was the $80 million guaranteed money. Well, that might be gone. Like, all you had to do was not hit on the person a wrong way. It made $80 million. You could have just lost every single game for like a week and for a month and a half, or a season and a half, and you would have made $80 million. But
I'll say the one other thing that's gotten a lot of news and kind of questioning around this has been the timing of the suspension, seeing as the university has known about this since I think March this year. This has been a long time. It's just recently came into the news, and since it came into the news, they're like, oh, well, now we've got to take action. And so that's one thing where you can see, were you not concerned before, or were you just like, as long as he's keeping the team well together? Like, what would, that's the thing that you can't quite weigh out, is like, do you do this because, well, there's allegations, so we look bad if we don't do anything, or were you saying, hey, I think potentially there's nothing actually going on here, so that's why we're not going to take action.
And I think
currently.
he does claim that the investigation didn't find anything. They found that they had a relationship, so that's kind of interesting thing.
Well, and they say the investigation's ongoing, so maybe they just discovered something in the last little bit that said, okay,
maybe so.
We now we have what we think is enough. Obviously, like, I don't know. It's
hard when it's he said, she said it. Only individuals over a phone call at 1 a.m. in the morning, So we'll see. But yeah, Michigan, not to be terribly mean to Michigan State, but it might be for the better. So you might have gotten lucky out on that one. Anyways,
no doubt.
Moving on. Let's talk Notre Dame, NC State. I don't know if you guys caught that game. Bit of a rain delay in that game.
And I planned to, and it was in the noon slate. But
it backed up to that 1:30 slate.
Yeah, my goodness. I really only saw highlights of this game. Notre Dame looks like a really, really, really good football team, right? Are they a great football team? I'm not sure yet. They seem pretty good. Yeah, and that's the best part, is you're going to find out, because you play USC, you play Clemson, you have ample opportunity still for Notre Dame to stake a claim. And I didn't even mention they play. Did I say Ohio State, or did I say Southern Cal?
No, you didn't say Ohio State, but yeah.
So that's the one that looms large, really, is that Ohio State game. So maybe Sam Hartman was the missing piece. They needed a QB. They got a QB. He looks pretty good in that offense. I feel pretty good about that pick, them being on my win totals draft team. It's one of few that I'm like, all right, I feel okay about that one. But even then, they still got to play Southern Cal, still got to play Ohio State, still got to play Clemson. But yeah, Notre Dame early returns. I don't know if you're an Irish fan. I don't know what you're worried about right now, other than the schedule.
Yeah, 100% agree with you, Brian. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, I thought they were not only in this game, but in the previous, because they played a week 0 game, so they've played 3 up to this point. They've looked better than what I expected them to be every week. I have slowly risen my opinion of them, and I think not this upcoming week, but week 4, that's the game against Ohio State. I think they have a real chance to, those who are paying attention closely know that they're a pretty decent team, but they have a chance to announce themselves as a playoff contender. And I think with the way Ohio State has looked at times and the way that Notre Dame has looked at times, that's looking more and more like I'm a Notre Dame lean for that. So a good win against, not a top tier program, but NC State is a well put together, well organized team that can give you trouble very easily and pretty well taken care of. So impressed by Notre Dame through 3 weeks.
Yeah, I love the balance that this team has. It just looks like it's a hard team to stop. I think they put up 120-something points through 3 games, which is kind of like, that's nuts. You're averaging 40-something points a game. I don't care who you're playing, unless you're playing all cupcakes. And even if you're playing all cupcakes, in your Ohio State, or Michigan, you might be only scoring 30 points a game. So, they look quality, but they will have their chance to prove themselves in the schedule. Ohio State has looked a little suspect at the beginning of this year, trying to get their feet underneath them. So I don't know if they'll get enough credit if they do win that game, but you still have other chances against USC and against Clemson later on this year. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how they go, but definitely going on there. A fun game, one that we did not predict to be close. You did, Steve. I don't know. North Carolina and App State. They do it again this year and go into double overtime. Did you guys watch this game at all?
I haven't seen, but 1 or 2 highlights. But I did. Did you hear Mac Brown's quote after the game?
No, go ahead.
So he basically I can't remember exactly what the reporter asked, but something about this is an in-state game. Do you think you should play this one more often? And he kind of he said, we've had a great run with these 2 games. They've been wild. They've been exciting. I think that North Carolina State and Duke should take up the mantle of playing App State. He's like, I think we should play East Carolina. I can't even remember the entirety of the quote, so I'm misattributing, I'm sure, some of it, but I'll find it and maybe circle back on it. But it was just really funny. He was just yeah, I think if I had, if I ruled the world, we wouldn't play App State again because they always get up for us.
And they did. Brian, you got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, shout out to App State getting up for the game and being prepared. They have had a knack in the last year and early this year of doing this, of being at their best when they're on the brightest stage. Drake May had not his greatest game against them, and he's been kind of the steady Eddie for the team all last year. He was kind of great wide receivers. Don't want to discount Josh Downs and everything that was going on last year, but also Drake May had excellent performances game after game. The one thing that showed up really well for them this week was an excellent running game. I'm trying to remember the name of the back who just ran.
Yeah.
Thank you. Deserves his name shouted out here because he really became the offense late in the game. That was their go-to of just let's just keep getting him the ball and getting the space there. The other thing is the defense that we saw show up with South Carolina wasn't quite the same defense that we saw with Appalachian State. And I don't know how much of that is the good prep work on App State, or if there was a drop off, or do we use the transitive property and go, wow, South Carolina must be really terrible on offense? It's really hard to say exactly what it is. We talk about we have multiple data points now, but it's sometimes they seem conflicting, and this is one of those ones that seems conflicting where I expected the defense to limit the other team a little bit better than they did.
Yeah. To me, it's a very interesting thing you say. Spencer Rattler had one of the highest PFF grades this last week out of all quarterbacks. He was second across the PFF. So it's where does this dynamic land on this defense? But Omarion Hampton was what I was planning on talking about. 26 carries, 234 yards, 9 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. Boy had himself a day, kept him in the game. Yeah. You're almost averaging 10 yards a carry. That's insane. And then
across 26 carries.
And then the other thing I got to tell you guys about is did you watch the end of this game where Drake May drives the field? I'm sitting there watching the game. I have it on my phone while we have the Texas game on and the Oregon game on the iPad. I'm they're going to win this game. The game's over. I mean, Drake May's driving him right into field goal position. It's not an easy field goal. It's a 30, 35 yarder maybe, but it's not a hard field goal. And they line up for the field goal. App State has 1 timeout left, and they call timeout, and the kicker kicks it and shanks it to the left. And App State goes, oh, we shouldn't have called timeout. And then what happens? The play again, They line up for the field goal, and the exact same thing happens, but they don't call timeout this time, and he shakes it right to the left again. It's like, oh, you missed it twice, and you couldn't get the win. So
I mean, at least miss it to the right. Like, show that you're making some sort of adjustment to how you're swinging.
Yeah, honestly, the second one might have been worse. I could have made this no problem. Just FYI, guys. But
so I've got that quote. I've got that quote from.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Mac Brown. He said, I've had enough, and then when asked, he said, all the pressure's on our kids. There's no pressure on App State because nobody thinks they're going to win the game. But the pressure's on us, and unless we win, we're awful, and it just kills you. So I've had enough. And he says, I'll enjoy my house in Linville and congratulating all the App State players and coaches, but I'm glad we're through. This is according to Football Scoop is where I'm reading. Pressed on if the App versus UNC games were good for football in the state of North Carolina, Brown came back with a good line. It's a great thing for the state of North Carolina. I encourage NC State and East Carolina to play them.
Yeah, there you go. He's got the second most wins out of any active coach and has 100 wins at 2 different programs. Only second to Nick Saban right now. So the guy knows how to put programs together. I know it's his second run in North Carolina.
A great run.
It's very, very impressive. He has that CEO feel. Like, I don't need to have all the things handled. I'm just very much like, poke this button, press that button. But anyways, moving on to Colorado, Nebraska. Brian thought we might not talk too much about it, but how can you not talk about Deion? We've talked a little bit about him. Another impressive performance by Shedeur Sanders. Nebraska kind of hung around for a little bit, the first half-ish, because Colorado couldn't get the offense quite going all the way. But then they put the pedal to the metal in the in the second half and put it away. Takeaways from you guys.
Colorado may struggle to block teams that have a defensive line. So Oregon might eat in that game. I think Oregon's defensive line is pretty good. Let's see. I'm going to go through the rest of their schedule. So Oregon's got a defensive line that might cause problems. I think UCLA, Oregon State potentially, and then Utah to close the end of the close it. So there's a few that there will be opportunities for those teams to make plays in the backfield because the Cornhuskers are good defensively. They sacked him, I think, 8 times, which to me was a lot. So that is one of those things that I think is a little bit surprising. And so that maybe is a cause for concern. Again, Colorado is way ahead of schedule. Let me just lead with that. Like, they're way ahead of where I thought they would be. So give them props, tip my cap to them, all that. But if you're wanting to even further elevate those expectations, those are the things that I think you're going to have to see. Is like, okay, can we actually block it up when a team's got a formidable defensive front? Other than that, they won another game that I thought would be a tight game, and they won it going away. So Nebraska's got their own problems, particularly offensively. But, I mean, Colorado, this season is playing out, like, if you're a Buffs fan, like, this is a dream season right now. Like, and there will be bumps along the way, I'm sure. But, I mean, compared to 1-11 last year, like, you have to be over the moon. You doubled your win total 2 games into the year. Like, and looking at their schedule, there's 3 or 4 others where it's like, all right, they're probably going to win that game. Colorado State, at Arizona State, against Arizona, I think is going to be a fun game. That will be one where their defense is going to have to play well because Arizona could score points. Like, but they're, I think they're way ahead of pace. So good for them. Like, I had this one wrong and got to own it.
Yeah, are you still staying along the lines of a 6-7 win team?
Yeah, somewhere right in there. I mean, if the ball bounces their way, maybe 8. That would be insane to me. I think that's high, but 6-6, 7-5, I can see.
Yeah, I was at 8-9 last week. This kind of brings you down to earth a little bit, but they've got playmakers and they get the ball out to those playmakers, and it's impressive. Like, and they're not afraid to go for it on 4th downs and stuff like that. Like, and props to Deion. Deion is doing exactly what I did not expect of him. Letting his coaches coach. He's not letting himself be bigger than the moment. He's got a big personality, but might be just hey, come on in, be a part of this. But when it comes to the experts or not that he's not an expert, right? Deion played in the NFL, but like when it comes to like running the offense, I'm not going to be overbearing on it. And the fact that you can check your ego on that I mean, some coaches named Jimbo Fisher can't do that, so it's impressive.
Ooh,
Not a shot, just reality. Okay, let's be real.
a shot of reality.
Hey, reality's a rough when it kicks your Christmas tree to the curb. Anyways, Brian, do you have any comments on that game at all?
Didn't learn. So I'd echo Steve's. That's the one thing is the defensive front against them is the one thing we learned, in my opinion, about Colorado. I don't think I learned a thing about Nebraska. I think this is what I thought they were last week. After last week, I should say. What I liked, because what I watched this game for, paid attention for, was strictly the drama of these coaches have talked back and forth, not directly. They haven't mentioned each other, but they've talked in the off season. And I thought Dion did a great job of not super addressing that, and just kind of, because I think if he did, it would make it seem like Matt Rule's on his level, enough to address, and he didn't really go after him much. Shador does and says, "Hey, this one was personal because of the comments that were made," and I'm glad that he did. Just kind of say look, if you want to make us the enemy, you're gonna have to deal with us on the football field. That's just how it's gonna be. But now it's I'm not gonna talk about Nebraska and Colorado in the same breath as far as where these football programs are at. And during the offseason, it was both year one coaches and kind of trying to bring back a team that has national title pedigree. Nebraska certainly is a lot more richer than Colorado's, but nonetheless, each of these teams have reached the pinnacle of college football, and they're on way different pace from each other as far as where they want to go.
Yeah.
Can I spin?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Can I spin this ahead and just say, if everything stays the same, which I know it won't, I'm sure it won't, but I am actually kind of pumped to watch the coaching duel between Kyle Whittingham and Deion Sanders play out over a few years to see how that goes. They've tried to turn that Colorado-Utah into that last game of the year rivalry in the Pac-12. I think it's kind of stuck. The problem is that Colorado hasn't been super competitive in most of those games, so to me, I love that that's becoming a rivalry, and now that they're both in the Big 12, hopefully will stay a rivalry. Obviously, I think the BYU-Utah one should be reinstituted as that final game, but would love to see them play every year just because that coaching matchup just got a lot more intriguing.
It definitely did. I would sit there and say I echo whatever you guys say about Colorado. They've been impressive. One of my takeaways wasn't Jeff Sims committed to Florida State when Mike Norvell took over as head coach?
And he told him to go away.
That he didn't stay. Oh my gosh, he's the same person he was at Georgia Tech, and I don't mean to bash the kid, but it's just been a struggle for him. So he doesn't make the right decisions, and he cost his team a little bit in a lot of ways. So, anyways, I feel bad. They're not paid. Oh wait, they are paid now to be good players. So I guess I can say that.
That Union Pacific money is probably pretty good. So I'm not gonna.
Yeah, we all have, if we're going to complain about student bills being waived or student loans being waived, I guess they must be getting paid something. Anyways, Miami, Texas A&M. The U is back, and the recruits are noticing, and it was closer than it should have been. Let's be real. What are thoughts?
Yes.
My first thing is this: Tyler Van Dyke looks so in control of this offense. He's got his weapons that are were oft injured or non-existent last season. So Restrepo's healthy and playing extremely well. Young's really good. George had a good few receptions, so it was looking like, oh, this isn't a one-trick pony. At times I felt like they were last year. They had who's the tight end who was super good? Will Mallory. So they had Will Mallory, and then Restrepo was hurt for parts of the year. But it was those are your two options as far as throwing the ball goes, and your coach wants to run a lot, so just stack the box and hope you can have enough coverage on those two. This one, it just seems like there's a composure that hasn't been there before. I shouldn't say there before. Hasn't been there in the past few years. And now when they take the field, I feel like there's total confidence. You see all the tools that made people salivate over Tyler Van Dimes 2 years back. And now with the confidence, now with the squad that he's rolling with, and the way that defense is playing, because I thought they came up with some really big plays against what is an extremely talented Texas A&M team. Those wide receivers are no joke. Wegman, I think, is a good quarterback still. but they just overmatched them the whole game long. And so, Texas is back, Miami's back? Question mark. Like, we didn't know what to make of Texas A&M to some degree coming into the season, but gosh, that was a much cleaner performance. We look at this game versus last year, the same game, very different sort of result. You saw Texas A&M gets the win, but it was kind of ugly on both sides. This is pretty clean by Miami and very solid butt whooping of a big SEC West team. That you should start to feel really good about yourself if you're a Miami fan, because you have games down the line that are going to be important for you to win. You have Clemson do you have Clemson on schedule? I believe they do. Clemson and Florida State.
Mm-hmm. And North Carolina.
So you have chances to really, really prove yourself, but you got to be feeling good where you are heading into Bethune-Cookman in week 3.
I'll jump in. Yeah. I agree with some of what you said, Bri. Other parts, like, I think to me this was really interesting because Miami, you said, played a clean game. I don't think they did. I think they muffed a punt. They had a punt blocked. Like, Texas A&M's first 10 points, like, this looked like a disaster was going to roll out. Like, it looked like it was going to be a train wreck. And honestly, as an FSU fan, I was like, I'm here for it. Score one more touchdown, this team will fold like a chair. And they did not. They showed some attitude, showed some backbone. I agree with you in terms of the offense. One of the things that to me was most surprising was that, and I would love to, like, because I watched it live, but I would love to go back and, like, now that I've, like, the thought process it's kind of marinated in my head, but, like, I wonder how many times that they got a 15-plus yard gain where they went fast. They almost, like, it compounded, where they went quickly after one big gain, and Texas A&M had no answer for the tempo. It's like they didn't know that they were going to run at that pace, which to me was like, okay, have you watched Shannon Dawson's offenses? Because they do incorporate tempo. And I'm not saying they're always blazing fast and always going at that rate, but they certainly do when they feel they've got an advantage. And so, like, they really didn't have an answer for that. I felt like as soon as there was a reasonable game that created a first down, boom, Miami was on the ball, ready to roll, and throwing, not Hail Marys, but throwing deep shots, trying to catch them on their heels. They did it several times. So yeah, I think you have to be really encouraged if you're a Miami fan. I also think you have to be really concerned if you're a Texas A&M fan, with the secondary and with kind of just, well, everything kind of all the way around. But to me, the secondary was the biggest part, where it's like they got bombed on so many times. And honestly, like, hey, they did great. Like, props to Miami. I just don't know how good that receiving core actually is. Like, I think it's good, but I mean, I also think you're going to face better ones. Like, if you're Texas A&M, I think you're going to face at least, I would put Alabama's receivers as better than Texas or than Miami's. I would put LSU's as better. So there are opportunities for other teams to see this tape and go, okay, we've got the matchups on the outside that we can take advantage of as well.
Yeah. My takeaway was I agree with you that they gifted him 10 points or so like that. And so this game should have been even more different. But just also the amount of, like, the protection that offensive line was able to give Tyler Van Dyke was so impressive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They did get, I think they got sacked twice, but I mean, you had such a clean pocket for so long. I mean, and this is what I was afraid of Miami. Miami had the talent there, and props to Cristobal for going out and firing the OC and bringing in a new one, saying this isn't working. I have the talent here. I know the talent's here, and I'm going to get a new OC. And all of a sudden, we're seeing Tyler Van Dyke being who we thought he was 2 years ago, and who I was afraid he was going to become. I actually think I talked about this at the beginning of the year. I'm like, I'm afraid that this is going to wake him up, because this is a different offense, and it's allow him to thrive. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm glad Florida State plays them a little bit later in the schedule, because they still have a bunch of hard games to go through, and so you get a little view of who this team is rather than having to play them like in the next 2-3 weeks. Because this is a team that scares me. I think this is a team that could, challenge for the Coastal, no problem. And could we finally have a Florida State Miami?
Oh, potentially. So, there's no divisions this year,
yeah,
so.
But I'm just saying at the end, because they don't have to play. They play a Coastal schedule, still.
Do they?
It's pretty much a coastal schedule.
Oh, is it? Is it? Okay. Um, but yeah, I think, yeah, it could be. I mean, with Clemson looking a little shaky, like, and already having a conference loss, there's the door's open for that.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I'm terrified. I'm just not gonna lie about that. All right, last game I got on my docket, unless you have anything else you guys want to talk about, is Iowa State, and purely because we're counting the numbers of how many points Iowa scores. I think right now we're at what 44. Did I do the math right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so we're 6 behind where they need to be in order to keep the offensive coordinator.
We need to make a meme of that, of like from the movie Elf, where he's like tallying the number of Etch-a-Sketches that he's made, and he's like, that puts you 7,000 behind the pace. We could do that. I'll take the lead on that. We can update it every week.
But they are one of the 2 teams in, what is it, the South? I can't remember what division that is undefeated.
West.
The West side, that's undefeated. That West is getting destroyed right now for the Big Ten. A lot of teams 1-1, some 0-2, I think. But yikes.
With Wisconsin going down against Washington State, I mean, obviously that's not a conference game, but you start looking who's the competition for me. I know Iowa's still not looking formidable on offense, but it looks like the more information we get on other teams, the more open that looks for theirs to take.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. They're not conference games, but yeah, we didn't talk about Washington State. Anybody want to talk about Cam Ward and how impressive he's been?
Yeah, I watched that game. It was awesome, and I was right again. Yeah, I think that guy's always had the talent. He's just needed some time and some seasoning, and I don't think he's a finished product yet. I think he can continue to get better. So it's fun to watch them play. That one was, that game was, Wisconsin made it interesting late, right? They end up kind of making a comeback bid in that fourth quarter, and yeah, I think I told you, I think the Pac-12 is really deep. I think I was a year ahead of them when picking them for my team, but I think they're a pretty formidable team. And the thing that's really fun about them is that they just play together. I love the sport for a lot of reasons, but I love that you see it all the time where 11 people, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I feel like Washington State fits that to a T, where any one of those guys is maybe not what you consider to be like the prototypical at their position, but because they're united, they trust each other, and they play within the scheme, they get results. And it's just been fun to watch that team kind of rally around Jake Dickert, I think is his name, their head coach. Obviously, Nick Rolovich, let go with the whole anti-vaxxer thing. He's done a great job. Yeah, he was thrown into kind of a really tough position when he got that job, and has done nothing but make that place back to kind of where it was when Leach was there. So it's been fun to see that. And he was the one who I don't know if you saw it, gave like that kind of plea, like, we deserve to be in Power 5 football. And I mean, he said it, but I felt it kind of went without saying after they blasted Wisconsin, like, for the second year in a row, I might add, like, that team does deserve it. I am one that, again, was salty about realignment because Oregon State and Washington State right now are on the outside looking in. Both teams undefeated, both teams looking pretty good, looking like at least like they belong at that level. They're not going to be the upper echelon of any conference, right? They never have been really for any stretch of time. But so that part has me frustrated that they're still trying to figure it out for 2024, but I'm going to enjoy it this year because they're doing really well, and I'm in their corner.
Yeah, fingers crossed it all works out. Go ahead, Brian.
On the Wisconsin side of things, like, I think you've got to see a greater effort in establishing the run and finding out what you need to do creatively to do that. You have one of the best backs in the country by most people's estimate in Braylon Allen. 7 carries in the game. He had 6 receptions. I understand you want to get the ball in his hands somewhere or another, but I don't think Tanner Mordecai is good enough to have a quarterback to be one who's throwing. Now, you get down early, and now you're forced to throw a little bit more, but you've got to establish that run game, and that's going to open things up for Mordecai, because that's kind of the caliber of quarterback that I think you're working with at the moment, where without that, he's not going to be even close to as effective. Obviously, every quarterback's more effective with a run game, but some like a Caleb Williams, you can be like, okay, well, run game's not going, you go get him, and we'll be just fine. And you don't have that. And so I think if it requires creativity to get that run game going, if it requires new schemes, you got to put a lot of investment there because you've got a really talented back, and you don't have a quarterback who can go out and beat somebody on known passing situations. And that's kind of another thing that has been brought to light in this game, which was kind of apparent in week 1, but even more so now in a loss, and got to be fixed if they want to have anything close to the season they were hoping for throughout the rest of the games.
Yeah, I think what you guys are saying on those, so I'm not going to add too much more. Any other games you want to talk about before we move on?
We got Steve defeated by the mute button right here.
Yeah, I've done it. It's okay. I've got it before.
Oof, that hurts. No other games, but I do want to run you through every single pick that I had last week. So before we finish our week recap.
Where's that mute button again?
Yeah, find it. Okay, so go back and listen to the episode. Again, we posted it on Friday. We recorded it on Tuesday. So some of the lines moved before like the games kicked off. But here were my picks as of the time of that. Kansas -3. That's one winner, right? Wake Forest, I said Wake Forest would win. Again, I didn't say like take them on the money line. This isn't gambling advice now, but like as far as my predictions for last week, Wake Forest to win. They won. They covered the spread. NC State +7.5. So NC State to cover, Notre Dame to win. NC State did not cover. So 2-1. Utah -6. That hit. Colorado -3. That hit. Miami versus Texas A&M over 49. That hit. Miami did it basically themselves. Iowa -4. That hit. Ole Miss to win. Definitely won. Texas to win outright, and the over of 56.5. Little 2-for-1 there. Got them both. Oregon to win. Yes. Wazoo to beat Wisconsin. Yes. Oklahoma State -3. Yes. UNC to win. I expected it going away, but they did win the game. Troy +16.5 was my only other loser. So what a week. That will never happen again. So if you did the George Costanza bet the opposite last week, I'm sorry, but you got to know that the regression to the mean is happening this week. So we're going to record that episode, I think, right after this one. So whenever that goes live, okay, get on the other side because there's no way Steve has a run like that ever again.
So it turns out Steve's biggest investment loss is not putting a dime down on all of his brilliant predictions from this last week.
Yeah, what a missed opportunity.
Honestly, Steve, it might be your year because we're going to go on to our teams, show this. We didn't talk about this in week 1 because it wasn't really relevant. We're going to talk about it in week 2 because we want to review our teams, see how we're feeling. Since we have 2 data points, I'm trying to share my screen. It's not showing up, but this is, guys.
While it's pulling up, I'll give a reminder for some of our listeners. We have our win totals draft that we do at the beginning of every season. We draft 10 teams, trying to have the most regular season wins among all of those teams throughout the season as it goes on. So we're 2 weeks in and seeing where our teams are at, how many wins we each have gotten. Sorry to jump over you, Corey, but it looks like we've got it pulled up here.
Not going to offend me on that. So let's go through our teams real quick and how we're feeling about them. Actually, let's go through Mark's teams and beat up Mark while he's not here. Mark has Georgia. We all know that's going to be Bama. We'll see. How many more losses do you guys have in Bama's corner?
At least one.
Yeah, I think at least one, but I mean, it wouldn't stun me if they also win the rest of their games up through the SEC championship game. They're that talented. It's just they got to retool some things and build an offense that Jalen Milroe feels comfortable playing in, and maybe focuses a little bit more running the football. But Texas showed up and stopped them quite a bit. So how many more teams on their schedule can do that? Maybe 1 or 2.
Speaking of Texas, I mean, Mark had a win-lose situation here, but we're all pretty high in Texas. I think they're going to do pretty well this year, right?
It's a good pick.
Kansas State, they've looked impressive. They've looked like in control of their games. Wisconsin, maybe not the team we thought it was going to be, but for a 5th-round pick, not terrible. What are you guys thinking?
I think he's going to regret that one. I felt that at the time. I was like, that's going to take some time for them to transition from the old Wisconsin offense to more of what Phil Longo wants to run.
Yeah. Air Force.
I'll be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Air Force this year.
Yeah.
Say again?
I'll be honest, I have not watched a lot of Air Force this year.
Yeah. Utah. He's gotten on
He's
2
also
and 0
been
with
good.
2-0 with backup quarterbacks. I think he should be feeling pretty good right now.
Iowa.
I mean, I think at round 8 round 8, that's still a decent value. I think they can get some wins. But
Do they only have one win? Shouldn't they have 2?
Mm,
we can check in on that.
They should have 2. Let me see the data that I'll pull up on that. But I'll check the data on that in a second.
Yeah, no worry.
Miami with 2 wins. That's probably a good pick. Ninth
It's a
round
great pick. Yeah.
And this Texas Tech one is
not good.
Steve wanted them, I'm sure, but
No, I'm a fan. I said I think they're a year out, and I'm feeling even more validated. Like, yep, they are. They might be also a quarterback out. Tyler Shuck keeps throwing the ball to the team with the wrong colored uniforms, so maybe he's back to his Oregon days, and that's what happened. He just thought he was playing for Oregon for a second there because he started his career there.
Yep. I can't imagine getting
wide open ducks everywhere.
Your old school, that'd be nice. Like Sam Hartman got it too. So, let's go to the other losing group right now. You see 15 wins for Mark, 15 wins for me, and then 18 for Brian and Steve. Ohio State, I'm not looking super excited about that one. I thought they'd be really good, and they're still struggling to put it together. Clemson, I believe in this team. I think they've had a little bit of a rough start, but I think this team will be good. I think the tell to take will be how they handle Florida State, and then see who they really are, because they play a hard schedule. Tulane, honestly, I wish they would have pulled the win against Ole Miss, but I'm happy about this pick still. They're a quality team, and I think they should win the remainder of the game.
Yeah, they almost won that game without their QB. Michael Pratt didn't play in that game, right?
Yep.
Okay. He was a late scratch. I was like, oh, bummer.
Yep.
And then, hey, they hung tough.
Yeah, the backup quarterback played great, especially for the first half. Washington, loving this pick even more than I thought I was. For fourth rounder, I'm really happy with that one. They looked really, really good. Liberty, I'm happy with. North Carolina. You guys bashed me on this pick. I don't know if you guys still think I'm probably wrong on that pick, but you guys did not like that pick.
I feel much more highly about this pick than I did at the time. That's for sure.
Really? Because I still am kind of a mixed bag.
In the fifth round,
App State.
You took Notre Dame, which is a great call. Brian took Air Force, and you guys took James Madison. Maybe you guys still pick North Carolina over that guy. But you also took Troy over North Carolina. You might be still on that too.
So. Yeah, we'll see. They didn't show up as well as I thought they would against Kansas State. So I don't know. I might be rethinking my Troy pick, but
yeah,
North Carolina, I still need to see it.
Boise State, I'm really not that thrilled with the comeback at the end of that game. If you didn't watch it, there was the last-second field goal to hurt them.
Bummer.
UCLA, I'm very happy with this pick right now. I'm grateful for the transfer or the change in quarterback to wow, I just blanked his name.
Dante Moore.
Thank you. He looks impressive, and I'm happy with how late I got this one. Maryland, it's been a little ugly. It was ugly against Charlotte. They were down 14-0 at halftime, but they ended up getting it done. And then Coastal Carolina, I picked it hoping to get 7-8 wins. That's probably what I think they'll be. So I can't be complaining too much. Let's go, Steve.
Yeah, USC, I feel pretty good about that pick still. I still think they need to outscore people in order to win, but they have a really, really, really good offense, so I'm feeling okay about that one. I've got 18 wins. I think it's important to point out that I had 2 week 0 wins rolled up in there, so that's something that might be inflating my stats just a little bit there. So I don't know if I feel like I'm on top of the food chain here. I feel like per game, I'm probably still a little bit behind, as I've got 98 games remaining with 18 wins, whereas Brian's got 99 games remaining with 18. USC feel good about. LSU, a little concerned about that, but the good news is that the rest of the SEC West continues to flounder as well. So all I need is for them to get their act together and get their act together maybe a little bit faster than some of the other teams that they're going to be playing with in their division. Oregon, I think I feel pretty good about that one. Again, I think I may be waffling and thinking maybe I should have gone with Washington because that was the choice was between those two. Penn State feel pretty good about, but again, I haven't really been tested. I talked about Troy a little bit earlier. Notre Dame, loving that pick. I think Sam Hartman was kind of the missing piece there. Oregon State, maybe a value pick toward the end of the draft. Louisville, mixed bag, not sure what to think. They've looked really sharp at times. Hard to draw a whole lot of conclusions against in their game against Murray State this last weekend, where they played 8 different quarterbacks. But that one's fine. TCU is a bad pick. That one's going to be a problem. FAU let me down against Ohio this past week. I thought that my last pick would beat Brian's last pick. Not the case. Tom Herman, get it together. But I need them to take care of business in conference play. So, yeah, really mixed bag. I feel really, really good about 4 teams, in the middle with a few others, and down on a couple others as well.
Yeah, going through my teams, I've got Michigan as my number 1 pick, and feeling good they've been able to ride out this self-imposed suspension. No, they don't play anybody for 7-8 weeks. I'm pretty confident in that one. Florida State's looking as good as I could have hoped at this stage. A win that ends up being pretty dominant over LSU, and now the next hurdle is Clemson, who has looked a little bit down. So there are other teams that
off a Boston College team that went to the wire with. Holy cross!
You're right.
Red bandana week. They're always dangerous on red bandana week.
But no, feeling very good about Florida State. Tennessee gave reasons to be concerned against Austin Peay. We'll see. I think that SEC East looks pretty light as a whole, and so that still gives me a lot of hope that they can get the wins against Kentucky, South Carolina, I think Florida this next week. Georgia, I think at the beginning of the season there was like an outside hope in my head, and now it's like I've just written that one off. That'll be a loss, but hopefully they can keep things together and not show some of the cracks they did there. Toledo's looked good. Had the 2-point loss to Illinois in week 1, so a bummer, but kind of one that I was anticipating was going to be a loss for them this year, and looked really good bouncing back in week 2. Oklahoma, so I'm on both sides of this last week's Oklahoma matchup, where they took a little bit to get going against SMU. So I still feel pretty good about it, but we'll see. That Big 12 has some teams in it that can cause some problems. So that will be interesting to watch in conference play. James Madison, I feel great about. They got the win over Virginia this last week, and hopefully they can knock off Troy on Steven's team this next week. Then I'll be feeling really good about James Madison. But overall, that one's gone as well as I could have hoped. Western Kentucky, I haven't paid close attention to. They've got the 2 wins. They're going to lose this week to Ohio State. If they win that, then I'm feeling fantastic. But other than that, they're kind of right on track. Fresno State, similar on track for what I was hoping for, kind of a upper tier team in the Mountain West. SMU looked good in their loss for a good portion of the game against Oklahoma, or at least kept it close. I shouldn't say looked good because there wasn't anything I was like particularly rolling about what they were doing, but kept it close for a long time against a good opponent. And then Ohio was really the outside pick here that could have gone, excuse me, could have gone 5-7, or could go, 8-4. Like, I don't have big aspirations for them, but the win over FAU is a big one because that was one of the tougher ones on their schedule. But so far, they've just played every game close. So it hasn't given me a reason to be like, oh, I've got confidence they're going to beat anyone. It's just like they seem to play up and down as needed. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's been a fun year. I feel like some of us feel better about other teams. Some of us feel worse. Who are you picking to win it if you had to make a pick now?
I mean, I'm picking me. I said after the draft, I thought I killed this. And after a few weeks, I don't think I've killed it, but I think I'm going to win. I think Steve's team is very formidable, though, and that's the one that concerns me. I think the most. I think on those two, you don't have any instant duds already as the moment. Like, I think on Mark's team, Texas Tech is potential for that, not for sure thing. Wisconsin also potential for that. Corey, Boise State's just off to a slow start. You might be just fine. Especially if Pratt comes back healthy pretty soon, you might be just fine.
We'll see. But no, my money's on you, Brian, as well. Sorry, Steve.
But no, I think that's right. Like, the Michigan State, Florida State 1-2 punch looks awesome right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and it looks like for Florida State, it's like, well, maybe Clemson isn't the hurdle that we think it might be. Yeah, I mean, it sure could be still, but I just, I don't know if you're an FSU fan going into the season, you have to feel better about your chances in that game, knowing your 2-week results and Clemson's 2-week results. You have to feel better than you did in the offseason, no matter what your expectation. Even if you thought you were going to win, you probably feel more comfortable that that's going to take place.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we want to talk about before we wrap it up? All right. Any parting shots? We've kind of been getting some jabs in the middle. But go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, we've been going out of our way. The first one I had was just for DJ Durkin. I think we're going to have to call you Jay Durkin because you did not bring the D to Miami. Just 48 points. Come on, man.
For me, I'm going with Clemson. You guys ran DJ out of the area. You probably owe him an apology. It hasn't been a significant upgrade.
The pick six to start off against Charleston Southern makes you just compounded on what was a mistake-ridden week 1, and you go, maybe we missed that steadier hand, which is shocking to say, but that is steadier than what they've had.
I think you did end up with 5 touchdowns in that game, but maybe I'm wrong on that. 4 touchdowns.
I think Dabo at some point is going to have to pull the Taylor Swift and be like, "It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me."
No, it's the fact that I won't take transfers. That's the problem.
I mean, when they play Florida State, that will be all the talk of if Florida State wins that game. Just two polar opposites for how we've built our team and how we've chosen to go forward. And
well, when you're behind, the best way to flip the roster quickly and get up to speed, as shown by Dion, is transfers.
Absolutely. And then, at that point you go, hey, Dabo, you had this much of a lead on where Florida State's at and where you're at. Now it's, disappeared entirely or gone the other way that fast. Like, this is on you. So.
All right. With that, we'll wrap it up. It's the CFB Paint Podcast. Listen to us on whatever devices you listen to us. Be sure to give us likes, comments, and give us some of your predictions. We want to hear what your thoughts are on some of the games, what your predictions are. Comment in the YouTube channel or comment on Instagram, and we definitely will involve those within our own discussions next time. For Corey, Brian, and Steve, we're out. Take care.